wonderful thing about Hong Kong is there's boats all around, ships, all different sizes. It's been like this essentially since man could get in a boat. First of all with Chinese fishermen, sailors, explorers. But it's really in the colonial era, the rise of the Portuguese, the British, where Hong Kong really changed. Essentially, this was a deep water port that the British Empire could park its ships before moving towards the Chinese mainland to do trade. Trade was extremely concentrated just in one area called Canton, and that was how essentially the West got its tea, its porcelain, its silks. To show you what it was like, we step back in time. Dr. Libby Chan shows us around the wonderful Hong Kong Maritime Museum.
So when you look at this painting in early 18th century, and this is the city of Canton and only this area.
So we're talking about 5 or 6 trading houses.
Yes.
This is it. This is the whole China trade.
Whole China trade.
It was the West's thirst for tea that first drove this trade. The problem for the West is that Imperial China didn't really want Western goods in return. So the traders had to pay in silver.
That's why lots of silver, they were flood in China for tea trade.
You know, it reminds me of now, the trade war, the trade deficit, right? There was a big one then, right?
Yeah.
All this silver flooding into China. Then the traders discovered silks and other commodities, most importantly porcelain, China as it's known, and they still paid in silver.
Talk about the porcelain in China, that will start very, very early, and will be in like 2,000 years ago that technology developed. But when it captures like Western eyes and become a very luxurious item for the home, for the royal family, or for emperors.
Fed up with paying in silver, the British jumped on the idea of using its vast quantities of opium, grown in India, to trade with China instead. Obviously, there was one big problem here. This is a highly addictive drug banned in China.
We know in 18th century it's very clear that like the Jiaqing emperor said there's no opium trade because everyone knows this kind of drugs is harmful to everyone. Yeah. But the European countries or Western countries still love tea, porcelain. So what to trade with them? And I no longer have enough currency.
In the end, backed by the British government, the East India Company forced open the Chinese market to opium with devastating consequences. War followed. Hong Kong Island was ceded to Britain in the first of the unequal treaties. Then another war. More land and privileges reluctantly conceded to the British and other colonial powers. The unequal treaties, 150 years of colonial rule essentially followed, and the British Empire being the biggest in the world at that time, Hong Kong became a magnet for so much industry, a gateway to the South China Sea, deep harbour ports, shipbuilding, finance, trading. But essentially that led to two very, very different systems. We had Hong Kong on the one side and of course the Chinese mainland. So essentially that's how it became separated. These are the two systems. But of course there's one more date to remember, and that is in 1997, when after over a decade of negotiations,